to do is join Cold Half-Blood.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Two Wise Girls podcast. So today we wanted to talk a little bit about the idea that Camp Half-Blood is a cult. And this is, of course, something that emo Luke says in a flashback scene in the show. And I feel like this is us preempting season 3 a little bit, just for safe measure here.
Just slightly, just a little bit. But I do remember us talking about during season 2, like, oh, we should actually talk about this sometime, because Manny and I both have different, like, special interests, whatever things you want to call it, looking into different cults and stuff like that. We've done videos on the Duggars. We mentioned Scientology before, Mormons. Yeah. There's a lot of them that we know about. And so I'm like, well, we could talk about this because it is like a very interesting thing to think about, of like what makes up a cult, like what makes something like a cult. So I looked up, Daniela Masonic Young is known as Knitting Cult Lady on TikTok. She is always knitting, and whenever she does anything, basically, and she is a cult survivor from the Child of God cult. She grew up in it and was able to get out of it when she was like 18. And so she has 10 different characteristics that to her make up a cult. And I think they're really good ones. And so I thought it would be fun to go through and just try to think of ways that like camp and then also like, you know, Chronos and stuff could be like a cult. Because one of the things I think is fun about Luke being so sure that camp is a cult, like emo little Luke with his like side bangs listening to something. I don't want to say My Chemical Romance because I like them. Nico can have My Chemical Romance. But the thing I think is always interesting about that is that he just thinks that Hermes is bad, right? And like Hermes is bad. I think that he is bad. But still, he thinks Hermes is bad. And so he thinks that camp has to be bad. And it's one of those things that, like, when we talk about abuse stuff that people don't have a hard time with sometimes acknowledging, is that your perception of a person can cloud all the things that they're doing or the things that you learn about things and make you look at them in this, like, very jaded light that makes you, like, think that camp is a cult and willingly leave that to an actual cult. Like what Chronos and stuff, and become like basically a cult leader along with Chronos and think that you're doing the right thing because you're just so sure that whatever your dad wants has to be wrong because he's a jerk. And like, I empathize with that. But I want to try to like at least talk about it and just come up with things on both sides and just let people think about it. Like, you can guess what we think, but it doesn't matter what we think. Just try to figure out what you think and like what little emo Luke thinks and what other things like that might come up in the next, at least in next season, of the things that he'll be doing and be feeling like he's justified doing them because of being in a cult, basically, or feeling like he's like trying to stop one is the way that he would put it. And so, okay. So the first definition of a cult on Daniela's list is the charismatic leader.
So at the very end of the day, charismatic authority simply means the opposite of authority by force. It simply means you've chosen to let someone have authority over you. And I like to define it as the difference between authority by force, right? Parenting a toddler, something you're probably familiar with, right? You literally can and sometimes have to pick them up and take them off screaming because you are in charge, right? Versus parenting a teenager. And I have a 10-year-old and I didn't think it started this early, but it does, where you can't do it by force anymore, right? Oftentimes they are bigger than you. You have to convince them to submit to your authority.
The Duggar family gives away a lot of their authority to whatever crazy person made up the IBLP church. They follow those rules and feel like they have to do them because this other person said so. Or like Mormons give up all of their authority to Joseph Smith, the like guy who was literally killed at the end of his life because he lied so much that people were storming the jail that he was in to kill him because they were so mad at him. And they think that he is the one that they need to follow over like everyone else. And so when you think about stuff with like, and the other thing that Daniela brought up that I thought was a good idea to, or interesting thing to bring up, was that some cults are not, they don't have like they have a charismatic leader, but some of them have more like, they're more like run by an idea. Like one thing she brings up a lot is because she's an army veteran. She says that the army is a cult, which I agree with that. And she used that as an example, that the army is run by like the idea of like the Constitution. And they don't have like one charismatic leader because the leader is always changing. And so with this, like for camp, the only person I can think of that could be a charismatic leader would be Zeus, because he is the leader, and you could say that he's charismatic. But I think that he's the only one that like makes sense in that role because he is the top guy. And then for the obvious would be Kronos would be the charismatic leader on the other side. And he actually is pretty charismatic, like how he shows up in people's heads or just like talks to them in his creepy little coffin that's like weirdly angled across the floor or whatever on the TV show. And just says kind of the things that everybody wants to hear. Like the things that like get inside your head that bother you, from at least the things that he says to Percy is that sort of vein. But he definitely says all the things that is meant to make you question all of your like ethics and morals.
Yes. Yeah. So with camp, like I'm thinking, I mean, the only other people it could possibly be besides Zeus are Dionysus and Chiron. And Chiron, I don't think that he likes to present himself as like the forefront leader, even though we know he's running the show. Like Dionysus is theoretically in the leadership position at the moment, but Chiron is he's just a figurehead. Chiron is actually running the show.
Yeah.
And everything falls apart when Chiron's not there. We see that multiple times over. So yeah, with camp, I guess Dionysus would be the other potential leader, but I don't even think it's that. And willingly giving up your power is also like the key factor here, because none of these kids are necessarily here willingly. They're mostly here because it's the safest place for them, and because they live in a dangerous world where they need to know how to defend themselves. And theoretically, both sides offer that training to defend yourself, but camp is kind of the more established one.
Well, that's the thing with camp, is that I feel like it's hard to say that they chose to let somebody have authority over you, because no matter what, the gods have authority over them. Like no matter what they do or say, it doesn't matter. They're gods, and they're also their parents in this version. And so those two things together, just them being their parents alone, they're always going to have authority over them. And that's like kind of the interesting thing to me about imagining camp like a cult, like edgy little Luke saying that it is that like camp is not it's not creating the things that put them in danger. A lot of times the way that in our world that you look at cults and can like kind of figure out that they are cults is because they convince people that they're in danger when everything is fine. Like Scientology tells you that unless you do like their way of like doing psychology and going clean, that you are somehow broken in. bad and are going to like die young from like diseases and things like that. And a lot of like the different religious sort of cults, like Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormonism and evangelical, they all say those sort of things. Like, people, if they never were told hell is a real place, which is not actually historically accurate, but like they are told hell is a actual place you're going to when you die, where your body's going to be like burning forever if you make these mistakes. That is what makes them afraid, that makes them do the things that they say to do. There isn't actually that actual danger. If people don't believe in that, like, I don't believe that hell is real, I'm not worried at all about that happening to me when I die in any way, because I don't think that it's real. And so in this case, though, with camp, like, it doesn't, if the kids never go to camp, they're still going to be hunted by things that are not even mad at them, they're mad at their parents. They're still going to have those things coming after them to try to get back at their parents that they've never met before. And so it doesn't really, it's like that whole thing, like, it doesn't really, the camp itself is not the actual reason that they're in danger. They don't make them feel like they're in more danger than they actually are, because they already are. That's like the thing about camp that is like what makes it interesting and also more complicated, is that it's not as cut and dry as even Kronos. Like, the kids who have to leave to join him are taking a big risk, because they're joining this thing that is like going against every other thing that they know. They're going against, they have to turn against camp. They have to turn against their friends and their parents and anything else that they could run into, and take like a big risk when they don't know if it's actually gonna like work out or pay off or anything. That is like something that is more giving somebody authority over you. Like, Luke gives Kronos authority over him, that he lets him take control of his actual body.
Yeah, his literal body.
His literal body, and completely disappears inside of him. And then realizes that this was a mistake. And so that's like a good example of kind of the difference, I suppose. The second thing that goes with this that Chiron is, even though is not the usual thing, is the thing that Daniela Masnick Young is known for. Is she came up with the term the skinny white woman,
which is essentially the cult version of intersectional feminism's white woman holding up the patriarchy, right? The woman next to the man who you would think is pure and innocent, because these are the things we've been taught about white women.
Yeah, she also brought up, was it Alison Mack? Is that her name? The girl from Smallville.
Yeah, she was one of the top people in NXIVM, the cult where that cult leader actually like went to prison, and she's actually fully like deconstructed everything that she did. But she's another example, and there's so many examples of things like that, like Scientology. Tom Cruise is kind of that person, but also Elizabeth Moss, the actress who's in The Handmaid's Tale, ironically, is very high up in Scientology. And she so that is why Scientology, and even like that Hillsong church that like Justin Bieber and stuff were, church quotation marks, that they were a part of, at least they might still be a part of. That's why churches like that try to get celebrities to join, as being like the skinny white woman trope, to try to get people that people think wouldn't be there if something bad was going on. And so Chiron is honestly that kind of person for camp. And this is like makes me laugh. Luke is that person for Kronos.
So here's the thing, is I think that Luke wanted Annabeth to join him so bad because he wanted Annabeth to take over. Like, he realized, especially Book Luke, like if we're talking Book Luke, who is extremely ruthless, starting from book 3 especially, he definitely would need that person to be a buffer at that point, because he's already done so much. And so, yeah, that's why I think he goes to Annabeth by himself and like does the whole please join me and run away with me thing. Why he like probably, we're we're gonna end up seeing a lot of scenes of him and her talking and them being together and him trying to recruit her. This is part of it, is wanting her to be that second voice of like, this is where we should be, other demigods.
Yeah, I do think that Luke's plan was to kill Percy, and then once Percy was dead, to then get Annabeth to join him. And honestly, Percy was dead, she probably would have.
Yeah.
Because he was so good at manipulating in general, but especially manipulating her. If he wasn't there, maybe there would be a part of her that would hang on to like that nagging thing of like where is Percy? Like, I don't, how he would explain like where he was. Because I doubt that he would just pop up and be like, Percy's dead! or anything like that. He definitely would have tried to like cover it up. But the thing that was like hurting my head when I was looking at this stuff, because one of the things with the TV show is that the TV show has like some changes that I kept thinking about, of like these like different scenarios with these characteristics. And so the skinny white woman is like Allison on the TV show, a literal skinny white woman. Like they like came up with somebody to like play that part. And like in a weird backwards way, she's like more, because the TV show is like being ridiculous when it comes to the how they're characterizing Luke. They were doing like the opposite roles. Like she was the one being more overtly like angry and aggressive and wanting to like kill children and not caring about anything else, when Luke was like, but Annabeth lied to me, which was the reverse of how that really should have gone. But she still is there playing that role. She's even, it generally kind of freaks me out to like imagine that one little scene where Kronos is talking to her, to imagine what Kronos would say to her, like a young girl. It just freaks me out to imagine what somebody like Kronos would say to a young girl that nobody else can hear. Not creepy things, just creepy things. But we've like made our own dissertations in the past about Chiron and defending him, and we're gonna probably continue defending him as time goes on. But I did want to, because he is like the skinny white woman, the person there to like make the kids want to stay at camp when they otherwise don't want to. They're mad at their parents, especially if they don't even know that they're demigods or anything, especially if they're not even claimed, like most of them aren't, when they first get to camp, and they are having to like sleep on the floor and like share a place where, because their parent won't even tell them that who they are and things like that. He's definitely that person, but the thing that is complicated about him is that it's not as like cut and dry as like he's just part of everything, part of like the gods like abusive system, and that's it. Like I feel like that's very like simplistic, I guess, or like dismissive. I don't know the right word, but I feel like it's very easy to look at him, and when you're a kid, like if you were a kid and you were at this camp and you were upset that the gods, whoever your parent was, had never claimed you, or did claim you but still ignored you, and you had to stay at this camp most of the time because you were in danger whenever you left, and you knew that this feeling of like fear about being hunted would never leave you, and not because of anything you did, but because of something your parent did that won't even pay attention to you. Being angry at Chiron for being like the person that like sets the rules of the camp, meant to make you stay alive for longer and things like that, or like has to be the person to like try to explain why your parents make the decisions that they do when it doesn't make any sense. And he has to be the one to like tell you when the oracle says that somebody has to go on a horrifying quest that they might die from, and has to try to present it in a way that isn't just, you might die and I don't want you to leave, but if you don't leave, they're gonna come here and like smite me where I stand, so I have to let you go. Like he has to find like some way to say that without scaring all these kids that are there and that he's trying to take care of. if you're a kid under that, it's totally understandable why you wouldn't care about any of that and why you wouldn't like want to listen. So I do want to say that like, I'm not saying that, but like when you're able to like look back at people like that, you can kind of see that like, oh, right. He's doing this very difficult thing where the gods are, he's like the in-between person. And it's very difficult to do that and to like find a way to like balance these things. That's why I think it's funny when people argue why he got kicked out of camp in Sea of Monsters. And I'm like, because Zeus has always wanted to get rid of him. That's literally it. Zeus has always wanted to get rid of him. And this was the like most vague reason why. Like one of my favorite lines from season 2 is when Dionysus tells Percy in this overly dramatic way, of course, that Chiron is Cronus's son. And he's like, oh, did you not know that? And Percy's like, well, no, but like, who cares? Like, Zeus is also Cronus's son. Is he going to kick himself out of camp? That like, it shows how flimsy that like quote unquote logic is, that Zeus is like, oh, you have to leave camp because you're Cronus's son, even though I also am. But like, just don't acknowledge this right now. I'm on a power trip. But it's just that idea that he didn't want Chiron there because he would think that he's being too soft on the kids. And they like reference things like that as the books go along, that people think that the gods and other people like that think that Chiron is too nice to them and wants them to wants to replace him with somebody like Tantalus that will kill his own children and then try to feed them to the gods or whoever else like they would want to replace him with. And so that's like one of the things with, it's hard for us at least to say that camp is a straight up cult because the gods started it suck, but they're not the ones actually there.
The difference here too is religion in our world, in our current reality, in real life, relies on faith. In this universe, it doesn't. They know what the actual universe is operating under, what forces control it, who is in charge, and so they are working within a hierarchical system that actually literally exists. It's not a made up one. It's not one that has no bearing on reality. It's one that is their reality.
Mm-hmm. And the last skinny white woman before I forget is Hera.
Yes.
Hera is like the ultimate skinny white woman in the Olympians' actual family system, who is there to try to be like, Zeus didn't say that Swan, he didn't mean to. and the other things that he does. That's quite literally why she's there. That's why in Heroes of Olympus, she is the one that is gone because Zeus cuts everybody else off, and so they went to grab her because they knew that would shake Zeus up and get the rest of the gods' attention, because she's the one that makes them all relax and like get along sometimes. And so if she's not there, then it's just like absolute havoc being wrecked because no one can get Zeus to shut up and no one else can get anyone else to shut up either. Okay. The next one is called Your Worldview Shifts Under a Sacred Assumption.
Group has this one belief that you must hold if you are going to be a member in good standing. And in the Children of God, that was that this random dude was God's prophet for the end time.
I like sat there and like thought for a while when it comes to like camp stuff, like what could be their sacred assumption that would be like a worldview shift.
Yeah.
And the only thing I could think of was, I feel like the gods think that the camp is there to have their children prove that they're like heroes.
Yeah.
And that like going on these like missions or quests to like prove their worthiness to like their parents or whatever is like the ultimate thing they should be trying to prove when they're there. And so that's like the thing that I could think of for camp was, you could say that that's like the one thing that could really work. But it's also interesting to me to think about, because I don't know that you have to actually believe that in order to be like at camp. Do you ever say, like, Percy tells them stuff as soon as he gets there, basically. And and like Dionysus definitely like yells right in his face, especially on the TV show, when he says no, because it's like, if you don't go on this quest, the world is like quite literally gonna end, because your dad and Zeus are gonna like kill each other and kill the rest of the world in the middle of their like rage fest. But I'm not really sure if, because like Luke was being like an angsty little emo child walking
Yes.
around camp being like, I don't like my dad, I hate my dad, I don't want to go on like a quest necessarily for a couple years before, and nobody really did anything to him. And so
Yeah.
I'm not really sure that like that would be the sacred assumption of that idea of like, go to camp and prove that you can go on a quest one day and make your parents proud. But I'm not really sure that camp really cares all that much actually about if you actually do that. They care more about like if you're good at capture the flag.
Yeah, there's
And
plenty of kids that never get called to a quest, and so I don't think it's necessary. But yeah, I guess the idea that you have to get Kleos for your parent is the only thing that makes sense.
yeah. And I will say, like, before, when the first book starts, like, you forget when you're reading these books because quests start happening more often. But they do mention that Percy's quest is the first one that anyone's got. Like, Luke went on one that his dad literally like gave him. But other than that, like, people don't really go on them very often. They go on maybe like one every couple years or something.
Yeah.
It's a very special event, and the fact that they start having to go on one like every year is meant to show like how serious things are, because it wasn't like that before like Percy was around that started all this other stuff happening. Um, I think it's obvious to say like that there is a massive worldview shift under this like new sacred assumption for Kronos and Luke. There's like a very extreme like worldview shift that happens to the people that join them, that they have to
Yeah.
shift to that worldview, where to the point that there's kids that are at camp that are like undercover, like are there, but you don't realize that they're on Luke's side until they try to kill you, like we saw in the
Yeah.
show. Or that's like a very extreme way of showing that, but that's like what that side is, which is why it's harder to like, it's interesting to think like how Luke and his side would like see it. In order to do that, you have to like break a person down and make them into this like very like tap into their anger so much that it completely supersedes any sort of empathy they could ever have for somebody else. Because how else are you able to like work every day knowing that everyone who doesn't agree with you is going to die, beyond to like convince yourself that you have to be right, that this has to be the only way, and that there can't be another way to like save everybody, because if there was, then you would probably do that. But you see kind of like Allison, I'm sure, wasn't walking around trying to murder 13-year-old children.
Yeah.
And things like that before she was suddenly on Kronos' side. And so the indoctrination that they do with that this is the way to get back at the gods, this is the only way to do it, by having this other god take them out and make the world better. And this is the only possible way that the world will be better. And so if people just resist us, it's because they don't understand the truth of like what's actually taking place, and we need to like take them out.
Where do humans fit in your golden age?
They'll be lucky to survive. A war between the Titans and Olympians will tear the Earth apart.
What about Camp Half-Blood? You gonna break your friends, Luke? Because they won't bow.
When the barrier falls, Camp won't be able to stand against our assault. The smart campers will see that and choose to join us. If they do, they'll be spared.
Also, the belief that, like, at the end of this, the Titans will give them the golden age back. And, you know, like the golden age, again, being this utopia where you don't die like a normal death and you live to old age and everything's a happy party for your life.
Yeah. And it's that whole thing of like, are you sure? Like, are you sure? And I guess that's like the thing to defend the idea of camp being a cult is that everything that like camp kind of says is more like actionable goals. Like you can like, this goes into like the next thing, which is the Transcendent Mission, which is a very like kind of vague thing. That's like what makes it a transcendent mission in a cult is how it's not very specific.
The Transcendent Mission is something that is so big and it's so obviously good, right? We're going to save the children. We're going to win the world for Jesus. We're going to end hunger. But it's also usually very ill-defined. And it's also the transcendent part of it, the overarchingness of it. That's how organizations get individuals to self-sacrifice.
It's like, you may not know what like your quest is that you're going to go on one day, maybe. You might have like dreams about it one day happening or what have you, but you at least have the general idea that like, okay, the oracle is somebody that gives like these prophecies. And so when she gives a prophecy and it ends up being about me, then I will go on this quest and I will do this specific thing that the prophecy exactly tells me to do. Even if it uses like confusing language and stuff, when you're on the actual quest, it becomes very clear like what it is as you're going through it, and it all like comes true. And then I get to the end and it's like you're searching for something. Like the kids in the Heroes of Olympus books that we're reading right now, they're trying to find the, you know, whatever his name is, Aeolus, and also Piper's dad before the winter solstice. Or like in Titan's Curse, they're trying to get to San Francisco and stop Atlas and save Annabeth, and also stop them from killing all of the gods by also the winter solstice. They have like a very clear deadline of what they're trying to reach or what they're trying to get. That makes it a little more easy to like picture in your mind. It's not like this kind of abstract goal that doesn't have like a clear path of how you would ever get there. Like, if you ever like seen those like TikTok videos that are like random tarot readers that was like, I didn't use any hashtags, so if you saw this video, this was meant for you, and they use such like vague language about like, you're protected and these nice things are going to happen to you if you just listen to your intuition, and nothing that they say actually has any like concrete information. They don't say anything specific like, next week this thing will happen, or somebody will do this exact thing to you. So nothing that they say could ever possibly be like proven incorrectly, because it's not like specific enough for you to ever know one way or another. And so that is more the Transcendent Mission, which is, I like the fact that Daniela pointed out that the Transcendent Mission usually involves children, because children are usually like a thing that people bring up when they're trying to like justify something. Like, we have to save the children and we have to save them from something somewhere. Like, the golden age is going to come back. What does that actually mean? Like, do you know what that means? Like, he doesn't know anything about the golden age, because people like you who actually know what they said the golden age was, it's just like, that's not what you think it is. And to the point that when we get to the end of The Last Olympian, or just in The Last Olympian, and he realizes, well, I'm not in control of my body anymore. And it turns out that now now that this guy's inside my head and my body, I can hear him say and think about how my body isn't going to survive this process, because he's going to go like full God form. And that's going to incinerate my entire body. And so he's been lying to me all this time. because nothing that he said was specific enough about what the golden age would be like if Luke helped him, that he never had to tell him, like, you're not actually going to be there because I'm going to annihilate your body once I'm inside of you or anything like that. He never had to say that because it's all such like vague ideas of like, oh, your parents are going to lose so much power that they're not going to be able to do anything to you anymore. And we're going to be in a golden age where all these really good things are going to happen, but there's nothing specific enough that you can ever like tack down as a lie. It's just like the vibes.
Yes.
Just vibes. That's basically all it is. The next one is the self-sacrifice of members.
And these purity requirements are extremely important to control because human beings are really bad at being pure and perfect, right? We're just bad at it, which is also why the cult leaders tend to never have to follow their own purity requirements.
Well, Luke literally self-sacrifices. There's no bigger self-sacrifice that happens.
Yeah, and I like the Daniela phrased this well, where she was talking about how there has to be some sort of like purity, and it doesn't have to be like sexual purity. There are a lot of sexual abuse happening in cults, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that. It just has to be that you're purely for something, and there has to be this idea that you're always trying to like get better or like reach this unreachable goal, because nobody can be pure in that sort of way. Like, we're humans, we're complicated. No one can do that. And so you're set up to like never ever actually be like the thing that they say you're supposed to be. And so instead of blaming like the thing, the organization or whatever, you blame yourself for never being able to reach that. Like, that's every ex-evangelical person, ex-Mormon person, ex-Scientologist person, is they just thought that they couldn't do it because they weren't good enough. They weren't strict enough. They didn't like believe in it enough. They did it. They were like doubting, and they just needed to like read the Bible more and like work harder. And then they would be able to do these things until a lot of times they start seeing like videos from people that have already left, and they realize that all these people have already left because they also couldn't do it. And especially when they're already in, when you start to realize that other people around you are also lying about being able to do the things that they say they're doing, but they're actually not. That's like the stuff that really makes people realize, like, nobody can actually do this stuff. That's why I'm struggling so much with it. And so I honestly couldn't think of anything with like camp of how the only thing that fits again is like the idea of going on a quest of like self-sacrifice, the idea that the gods think that their children should sacrifice their lives, their happiness, this whatever, because they say so. That's very much what the gods think they should be doing. And so they look at it, they like downplay the seriousness of kids being in danger like that, or kids dying or whatever, because they just think like, oh, this is like what you're supposed to do anyway, right? To be a hero. And so why would I be that upset? But like, nobody else does. And the thing always about camp to me, it's very easy to defend to me, like Chiron and camp in general, is that when you read the books, there is like no possible way that you are on the god side. It's always about like framing, and the gods are always framed as 100% in the wrong. Even like every character has moments where you see like their humanity, because it is important to remember that abusive people like that are like human. They're not just horrible all the time. But throughout the course of the story, they're always framed to be the problem. They're always framed to be in the wrong. All the issues that are happening to all the main characters are happening because of them. Even Kronos is happening because of them. And so you're not supposed to actually think that when the gods are like, yeah, you're supposed to sacrifice yourself for me. You're not supposed to actually think that that's actually what you should be doing. And every other character in the books besides them like pushes back on that idea. They even start pushing back on it a little bit sometimes. At least Hermes cries about Luke for a while.
Yeah.
And so that gives you the idea that at least some of them don't like the idea of their children dying for them. But that is like the thing that you could say about the gods, at least. And then for Cronus, it's very easy. Like particularly for Luke, like he sacrifices the idea that he could be happy one day, like genuinely, to give all of that up and just join this kamikaze mission instead. But I more think about the people that Luke gets to join, like the idea of like purity. Like Luke himself is always trying to like prove to Kronos that he's like good enough to be like his second in command in a way. He's just always trying to prove that because of course Kronos never makes him think that he has, because that's no good cult leader is ever going to do that. They always want people to be like striving to feel better and never feel sure of their place, so that they're always trying to beat each other, and they also don't really talk to each other and realize that they're all like worried about the same thing. They just like haven't said it out loud. But more with like Luke and how he gets people to join. It's just he like the first example I thought of was Ethan, that when he's trying to get Ethan to join his little gang of stupidity in the labyrinth, his like tryout or whatever for Ethan was killing Percy, was killing, you have to kill somebody.
Gladiator style.
Yeah, and so it's this whole idea that like Ethan is not somebody that usually wants to kill people, and isn't somebody that wants to kill, especially like peers, like people, even somebody he's never met before, but like somebody who is his own age. There's also a demigod. He he doesn't really want to do it because it's pretty easy to get him not to, but it's just that whole idea that that's the way that Luke gets people to like try out for his crew, is they have to prove that they mean it by doing something really violent that like demigod kids would normally never ever do. That's like sacrificing who they are as a person.
And then especially like when you consider Luke is a great swordsman himself. He could have put himself in the ring and very easily won. He could have done that, but he didn't. He was like, I'm gonna send this new kid. Like, yes, it seems like he trained him a bit, but like you could have done it yourself.
Yeah. And I know people think about self-sacrifice with Luke, but I always think about the people that he more does that to, of the people who he gets to join him, even the people that we don't really know who they are, like the young kids that he gets to join because they're too young to like really know what camp was like, because some of them never even got there before he took them and things like that. Like he's making, the way that Luke sees the world is very it's very black and white, and it's very violent. And the way that like he sees it as, I am in danger all the time, which like, yes, you're a demigod, sure, but he's looking at it as like, I need to like literally kill people who don't agree with me, like that extreme, because if I don't, then they're going to kill me later, and this is just going to become a bigger problem, so I might as well do this and get it over with. Like that's such a black and white sort of violent, unempathetic, just like sad, like really sad way to look at the world. And he's not only doing that, he's also trying to convince all of these other children that are younger than him, that look up to him, that knew him as like a leader at camp, that this is actually the way the world is. Like he's taking very impressionable young people that trust him and like making them think that the world is a horrible, ugly, disgusting place. and that the only thing that they can do to save themselves is kill their own people. Like, that is so messed up. And that's like the stuff that he's asking them to sacrifice is like their actual identity. And because like what they can get it back afterwards, but it takes a long time to figure out who you really are after somebody convinced you to do things like that. Jeez.
Backbiter can open secret doors. We can stay on the run as long as it takes.
Stop saying we.
So the next one going into that general idea is that there's a limited access to the outside world. And so, like we said before, people when you go to camp, they have protections so that, but they're not, and they say that, we have protections at camp so that monsters can't get in, so that you're safe here, so that when you stay here, you don't have to worry about being attacked anymore. And you can like try to understand what's happening with you and figure out what to do next. But there is also the point to bring up that you're not actually stuck there. I guess the idea of the limited access to outside world, like why that makes it a cult or an unhealthy group, a high control group, whatever, is that the idea behind that is that they limit the like connection you have to the outside world, so that because the idea is that if you actually start talking to people that aren't part of this like enclosed group who all believe the same things as you do, that all believe all the same things as you do, that aren't like surprised by all the things that you're doing, that like will start breaking like the conditioning you have to think that this is normal and fine, because you talk to somebody who thinks completely differently, and it makes you start like thinking about things that you don't want to think about when you're usually in that sort of environment. But the thing with camp is that they do that pretty often. Like they leave camp and go back to like the normal world. And it's a regular part of their thing that they spend more time away than they actually do there. And so if camp was like an oppressive place that was trying to like warp their minds into like worshiping the gods and was trying to change, like get rid of their personalities and have them become like heroes like the gods wanted them to be, if that was their actual goal, whenever they went back to like home again and went back to school, they would just not want to come back, because they would realize that they don't like how they feel when they're at camp. It's like, this is like an extreme example, but I think that camp is based on like making a wilderness camp, like the troubled teen camps, but making it like actually good instead of what troubled teen camps are actually like. But it's like a camp like that. Like when you go to a wilderness camp, or where you go to like a treatment center that is awful, you justify the things that they did because you say like, oh, they just cared about me and they just made me do these really difficult things because it's the only way to get my attention. But then as like the months and years go on and that stuff fades away, you start looking back and realizing how horrible it actually was. And then you start telling people about it, and then they start telling you like, oh my God, that is not like okay in any way at all. But like that kind of thing doesn't happen with these kids at camp. They love camp, and they love Chiron, and they love the friends. They look forward to seeing the friends that they have there, and like being able to like check in with everybody all the time. They randomly run into each other sometimes during the year. They're allowed to go back and forth all the time. It's not like one or the other. And like nothing bad happens to them like mentally when they leave. They're fine. They just go back to their normal life, as opposed to the limited access to the outside world is just all the grooming. Just all the grooming. There's so much grooming. like Chris Rodriguez joining Luke and then being discarded by him, and Selena, and doing all that for Luke for all those years because she thought that it was the only way to keep people safe, because she never told anybody else what he was doing and what he said, because he told her not to, and she felt like she couldn't, and so she didn't. If she told somebody when that stuff was going on, they would have found a way to get her away from him, and that like whole thing would have stopped, but she didn't tell anybody because she was told that she shouldn't. And even like Ethan, like I said already, Ethan being somebody that just, he joins them, and like we mentioned this before, but it's still like a funny thing to say. Ethan talks to Percy 4 times and is completely deconditioned from the cult.
Yeah.
He talks to him 4 times. He talks to him twice when they're in the labyrinth, and then twice in the last Olympian. And then he lets himself die, basically. In the end, he would rather die than continue on as he was doing, because he realizes that what he was doing was wrong. He started realizing that what he was doing was wrong after talking to Percy 3 times. Percy told him, hey, I saved your life, but you're trying to kill me. That's pretty fucking hypocritical. And that, like, that one sentence made his entire worldview collapse. And it realized that everything that he was doing was wrong. And that's like kind of what it sounds like dramatic, but honestly, when you're in like a very enclosed environment like that, where the only people you talk to are saying the same things you've already thought and said or whatever over and over, somebody just saying something differently just like makes you guess or like second guess everything, and that can be like kind of like shattering in a way. Like I know I went through that myself with like my own family, of just times when I would tell people things and the way that they would like look at me about things that I didn't think was bad, and they would look at me like, what did you just say? And I would think about that for like decades, and it was those things that made me eventually like go to therapy and stuff, because they bothered me so much that I wanted somebody to like make it go away, basically. But that kind of thing, like, it doesn't take that much. Like, all those characters had moments like that where when they started actually talking to other people, basically they realized, like, what am I doing? And that's why I feel so awful about, I love Percy so much in The Last Olympian, that he makes a very big point that he doesn't want to hurt the young demigods that are like babies, that are like 11, 12 years old, there's no conceivable way that they have any idea what they're doing. And especially in like the course of the story, that in the Battle of the Labyrinth, they hear Luke like literally wanting to like traffic them, like offering people money to just take demigods. And so it brings up the idea that he could be doing that. He would just be taking people against their will that don't even want to necessarily be there, that are then like convinced to stay, basically. And so it's just that whole idea that the way that Luke and his like army and Kronos and stuff work, they have to only talk to each other. Because as soon as you talk to anybody, you start talking to the people that you're planning to kill. That's definitely going to mess up you killing them, because you're going to see them as a person and you're not going to want to kill them anymore. That's generally how that stuff goes. That's why there's so much like indoctrination and things like that in like the military in every single country that has like a big military. There's a lot of indoctrination like that, because they have to dehumanize whoever the other side is so much that you don't see them like a person to justify killing them. You have to like, the human brain can't do that while recognizing that they're a person and that they have a life just like mine. You can't do it anymore. That's why some people desert when they're actually like in the military, because they are in it and they realize suddenly what they're meant to do and they just can't do it anymore. Did you want to say anything about that?
I mean, like, what that made me think of was Israeli propaganda about Palestinians. Like, it takes a effort, yes, but we can see that it works in practice to dehumanize people. And you also brought up the military does it, of course, too. And our military does probably base some of it off of IDF. So there's, well, I mean, earlier we had talked about a shift in beliefs. That even itself is a shift in beliefs, that like
Mm-hmm.
You know, oh, it's a means to an end to kill all of these people.
The next thing is having a distinguishable vernacular, which is basically like having words that don't, like, normal people don't know what they mean.
One that like every single cult person agrees on. They're like, yep, all the groups have their own special language. This is the easiest thing to change about ourselves, right?
And you have to like sit there and explain to them like what they mean. And it is one of those things that makes you feel like you're part of like a cool group. And things like that like, you know what all this stuff means, and you also want to be the cool person that knows what all these words mean, and so you want to like keep going or like learn what they all mean. But it also is one of those things that makes you sound like really, really weird from the outside, like when Scientology starts talking about going clear. That sounds like very like an innocuous thing if you don't actually know what actually entails with like going clear, like the just horrifying abuse that they do to you when you do that. Like, just to like be a little bit honest about that, like Danny Masterson is he's still actually important to the Church of Scientology, even though he's in prison right now for many years for horribly raping people when he was out. But he is still considered like a member of Scientology in good standing. Even though he is in prison. But when all of that was going on, when he was just raping women and Scientology was covering it all up, he would go to get clear for doing the things that he was doing, which was just them asking him all these questions about what he did and why he did it and things like that. And then his victims also had to do that.
Oh, wow.
To like, quote unquote, get over like what he did to them. They had to go and like do that, and then we're like told that they, you know, should be fine with what happened and should never bring it up again. And if they do, it's because there's something wrong with them. And so there is a little bit of this stuff in the Percy Jackson books, like but it's more like world building words, like, you know, what a half-blood is.
It's ancient Greek words too, like it's ancient Greek concepts. Like I already brought up kleos, which is a word, but it's also this concept of, you know, like intangible honor that you carry with you as your legacy. And trying to think what else. Xenia is one I've done a video on a long ass time ago. It's the concept of being like a good host that was very, very important to Greek religion, which is, it's not explicitly talked about, but it is a theme in Sea of Monsters a little bit. So like, yeah, there's language, but it comes with the fact that we're talking about an actual religion once again, and an actual religion which in this universe does exist. It is true. So claimed, unclaimed would probably be one that's like unique to camp. That's really, I mean,
yeah, and like a big three kid. Like that's like something that you could say, like that they call kids like big three kids, and everyone knows what that means when they say that they're a big three kid. And then for I'm laughing at myself because I wrote down for Luke, we don't call themselves monsters. that whole thing from particularly the show, but he tries to do that kind of stuff in the books too. Like he tries to be like, I am the nice guy here. I don't call monsters monsters. You guys are horrible for calling them monsters when they're actually, he never actually says another word to call them.
Yeah, but he's just like, they're also children of the gods, so that's all he gives them.
And with him, it's more like how they weaponize like the golden age. And like the words that he says when he's trying to like justify the things that he's trying to get them to help him do and stuff like that. But they don't go too hard on the vernacular stuff, besides Rick trying to teach everybody Greek and Roman and Latin words. But that's just him being a a Latin Greek professor. But they don't go too hard on like the different words being weird. Like if you ever want to, I should find a video. Oh, I'm going to try really hard to find a video, but Alyssa Grenfell, who is an ex-Mormon, sometimes she will do these videos of like things that you hear only in Utah. And I honestly have no idea what she is talking about.
6 sentences you'll only hear in Utah. I was getting my nails done so I can look nice for the fireside tonight with one of the 12. It's gonna be such a special moment. They're gonna have the Sunbeams go on stage for a special musical number, including my youngest, Jackson. We're grabbing swig after mutual at the Steak Center. I just have to get my Temple Recommend interview first. Yeah, he's an RM. He just got back from his mission in Brazil, and he said he wants to make me this drink called Mate. Does this shirt show my garments? I'm hoping for a Nickmo. Oh, that family? Yeah, they're inactive. The last time they came to church was 6 months ago for a baby blessing. We were gonna heart attack their door, but we ended up just leaving crumble and a note instead. Yeah, after undergrad at UVU, she wants to get an MBA from BYU, but I think it's more of like an MRS because she knows that those men are gonna be richer than heck. TBH, I think they're all Provo All-Stars anyways, so she can have them. I told her she can't come to my ceiling if she's gonna wear a dress that short. She can't hike up her garments at my wedding. If she's gonna do that, she can just meet us at In-N-Out after the temple.
This is like the big one. The next one is the us versus them mentality.
Growing up, lack of language, right? We were not a cult. We were missionaries on this special mission from God. And then in school, I was a super student. And then I was in the military and I was a super soldier in the military. And then I got out and I just tried to work a regular corporate job and I basically fell apart, and I realized like, oh, there's nothing to make me feel special.
Like a big part of the us versus them mentality is that they try to make you feel like you're different than everybody else. You're somehow more special than everyone else because you've somehow figured out this thing to be a part of this like super special group that other people haven't figured out yet because they're too stupid to figure it out or however they phrase it. And so you're above everybody else. Everyone else in the world is like living this other life, but you're somehow like ascended or above it because you know these truths about the world that nobody else does. And the other thing she mentioned about it was that you go along with your own exploitation. Like you see people exploiting you, but you just like let them because you just think that it's worth it with the whole us versus them mentality. And when it comes to camp stuff, it's hard for me to think about it like that. And that is definitely like my own like bias, I suppose. But like if I was somebody like Luke, I would look at camp as like they try to set you up for feeling special. And then when you get there and going on a quest isn't like what you thought it was going to be, it's their fault that I feel like this. It's their fault that they did this because they told me this was the thing that was going to make me happy. And now that it hasn't, it has to be their fault. And like I'm staying at this camp and I'm picking strawberries with the satyrs and doing like these obstacle courses with the other kids there and playing capture the flag and things like that. And so I'm staying here and I'm letting them like use me in this way. And I'm sure that's how he eventually was kind of like taught by Kronos in his head to think about that stuff. And he was already angry about that kind of stuff anyway. But for me, it's hard to like see it that way just because it's hard because camp wants you to feel the kids to feel special in the way that they want them to know that they deserve to live.
Yes.
And that's literally it. And that's like why for me, like personally, it's really hard for me to see a camp like this as it's hard for me to entertain that idea, especially with us versus them, because I remember what it was like as a kid like that. Like I didn't have a camp like this at all. There were some kids at my middle school and high school where we were going through abuse at home, and we somewhat knew we were like one of them was an old neighbor of mine, and we would like kind of like I've said this to you before, at least we would kind of like stare at each other when we were at school, we wouldn't say anything really to each other. But we just all kind of like understood that something was going on. And I remember like one of those kids, my friends would sometimes make fun of them because he would wear like the same clothes to school multiple times a week because his parents didn't give him enough clothes in that way. And I would yell at them and I would tell them to leave. I would tell them to leave him alone. And I was like, that's not his fault that his parents don't give him enough clothes or like don't like help him wash his clothes and stuff. That's definitely not his fault. And I was also that kind of person that I would sometimes wear the same thing more than once because I didn't want to do my own laundry, or in the years that like I didn't have that much clothes because the 90s didn't believe that fat people existed.
Oh my
And
gosh,
so
yeah.
it was literally like an incredible hassle for me to find any clothes that fit. Like my aunt used to yell at people in stores because they never had things that fit me when she was wanting to buy me new clothes every school year or whatever.
Mhm.
But still, it's like I didn't have anything like that. I didn't have like I didn't really meet people who went through similar things as me for a long time. That's why I was always wildly obsessed with like books and TV and things like that, because the
Yeah.
friends that I made in like fandom spaces online were the ones that went through things like that, although none of them ever went through as much as I did,
Yeah.
which is a complex that I still sort of have, but not as bad, because I've met people now on TikTok that have gone through just as bad things as I have, but it took a very long. I joined TikTok when I was like 38. So
Yeah.
it's hard for me to look at camp as like an us versus them mentality, because it's more like camp is meant to be this place that these kids are supposed to. It's the only place that tells these kids that they deserve to live. Like legitimately. Where else do they hear that? Even when their parent like Sally is a good parent,
Mhm.
Percy still didn't really get to hear that very much because he was away from home, and Gabe also was hitting him. And so it's just there's always something in the way for them to hear that in a lot of other places. The gods think they're completely disposable.
Yeah.
They don't really care enough about them, and so this is the only place they can go really where they can kind of feel like that and like get some like sort of confidence in themselves, or just like ability to be told that they deserve to like be happy, which is honestly like a battle. When you're like a kid that's grown up in an abusive environment, you don't think you deserve to be happy. I legitimately didn't think that I deserved to be happy until I was like 40. Like it was a really long time before I like fully believed that I still sometimes think like I'm not really sure that I do, because life is really
Mhm.
hard and I don't want it to be so hard anymore. Maybe I should just like give up hoping.
In some cases, like the first instance of family.
Mhm. Yeah, like and it's just like the
Like,
little things that happen, like even with Clarice, when Clarice isn't really like good with Percy and stuff, still like there is that short story where he sees her and just like runs off to try to help her. But it's just that general idea that like when Percy goes to camp and then he leaves thinking that he has all these people that are now like friends that he at least knows again.
mhm.
And so he thinks about them in the year between and like wants to do good enough in school so that he can go back and see them again. And he didn't have anything else to like keep him going like that in school really, besides seeing his mom. But now he has this other motivation that has just to do with him. That is like a complete positive of if I get through the school year alive with Tyson, then I get to go back to camp and like hang out with all of my friends again and see them
Yeah.
maybe for longer this time and things like that. And so it's just not something that they otherwise really get to feel very much. And it's so great that Rick like made up a place where kids could do that, because I feel like when you care about kids, that's what you want. You want to just like create places like that for kids, because
Mhm.
there aren't that many places that actually exist in real life like that, especially for kids that are being abused by whoever. There aren't that many places for us to go. I used to hang out at bookstores and the library a lot. Like a lot. But, and then of course, like the other side of this with the us versus them mentality is that's Luke's entire personality.
But you were wrong to think that she would ever stand with Kronos.
She would have wanted change.
Not through war. Luke, Kronos has already changed you. You can't even see how much of yourself you've lost. I just wish...
What are you doing?
That child, boy, man, whatever, is literally desperate for somebody to be like, you're so special. You're such a special little person. No one else could ever do this thing. I'm like laughing because he reminds me so much of my dad like that. Like it was literally like begging someone to be like, you're so amazing. Nobody else could ever say no to you and you're the best. And
Apparently, he still thinks there's hope for you. I disagree.
And to the point that, like, Kronos shows up as this, like, evil voice in his head, and he's like, you know what, voice? You're right. Like, voice that I can't even hear. Like, I don't even know what you look like because you're just, like, an independent voice talking shit about, like, the gods and my dad and stuff. You know what? I believe you to the point that I'm gonna, like, try to kill people now because it takes that little amount of work to get me to like just go with you because I just want someone to say that I'm special. And like I get the idea of wanting to believe that like maybe I went through all of these things because there's something special about me, as like almost like the idea that people think of as karma that I don't think really exists at all. That idea that like, oh, I went through all these bad things, so I'm going to get karma one day where all these good things happened to me as like a reward for all of the bad things that happened to me before. I'm pretty sure that Luke thinks that Kronos showing up is his like karma for dealing with his mom all those years or something, or having Hermes as a dad, that he could be the one to like take everybody down. But it's also just that he is willingly giving up being exploited. He knows he's being exploited. Like there's no way that Luke can't think that he's not being exploited. Just like like the idea so much that somebody tells them that they're special that they just like are like, well, I guess that's worth it. And it's like, oh my god, it's not like nobody should ever make you feel like that in order for somebody just to be nice to you. It's the whole thing that like camp would exist without Kronos being there. Camp would exist without any of that stuff happening. They would still have the same problems and they would still be trying to fix those same problems. They still are in the books after he's gone and things like that. But if Kronos was around and camp wasn't there, how the fuck would he get anyone to join him? Like he has to like demonize this other thing and be like, this thing that you see as safety and companionship is actually a trap that's trying to like convince you to stay here, to like neuter you and make you like stop being yourself and turn you into a different. He has to like use this other thing that already exists as a way to convince them to join him at all, because if that thing didn't exist, I don't know what he would say to them to convince them to join him, because it's such a huge risk. And that's just generally what it's like with like every sort of cult thing like that. There has to be like a bad guy. There has to be a bad person that you talk about constantly to justify what you're doing. There isn't like, there's monsters that are attacking them, but they don't really talk about them like that. They don't like obsess about the different kinds of monsters that are trying to kill them when they're at camp. They just know that they're there. They can like read books if they want to, if they're Annabeth, about like what the different kind of monsters are. They like learn things to help defend themselves, but they're not like, they don't leave with like encyclopedic knowledge of these monsters and go out to like hunt them and kill them or something. It's just not the same kind of us versus them thing. Like they exist because the gods exist. And so let's help protect you from them in case you happen to run into them if they start hunting you or something. So you know how to survive. But like with Kronos, they're like literally going out there and like hunting these like little children. And every single plot for every single book is just them trying to get into camp to kill everybody. Until the end. That's literally all they're trying to do. That's it. Okay. So the next one goes with this: exploits the members' labor.
When you have this mission and you have the fear of what's going to happen or everyone in the outside world against you, like you're gonna work harder.
Oh my God. The amount of things I'm about to say about Luke is going to be really fun. But before I talk about him, because we're comparing with camp, again, it's the God sending you on quests. Is that like, yeah, they like sell strawberries as their like shield to like the rest of the world so that nobody asks too many questions about the wilderness camp. That's an actual like camp that actually cares about kids instead of like every other wilderness camp out there. But they don't have to, they're not like having to like do that. Like they don't show up and they're not, and like Dionysus doesn't show up and give them like a bucket and be like, you have to pick 4 strawberry buckets a day in order for you to stay here as your rent or something like that. That actually happens at the messed up wilderness camps that are troubled teen camps.
Yeah, I just rewatched Holes, and Holes, it was like you have to dig literally 1 5-foot by 5-foot hole before you could leave. And that sounds a little bit more realistic.
Yeah, and like the wilderness camps that are actually troubled teen camps, when the kids that are there, they're like building like buildings that they're like, instead of hiring construction people, they make the children whose parents are spending thousands of dollars for them to go there, and they make them do manual labor all for like 12 hours a day and like build the like buildings for the camp so that they don't have to like actually spend the money to pay somebody to do it. Or they make them go on like 15-20 mile long walks every day. But a lot of it is like they have to like literally like do like manual labor, like clean up where they are, take out the garbage, and like do all this stuff that normal kids that age wouldn't do. And so kids at camp are like, yeah, they have to keep their cabin clean, but that's like every child. Like every child has to do that kind of stuff. It's not like anything over the line, I suppose. But again, you could see it as like the God sending them on quests was them exploiting their kids' labor, which is what it is. That's why it's like the whole storyline happens the way that it does. But to talk about the Chronos stuff, which is a lot when it comes to exploiting members' labor, do you remember anything that Luke ever does? That man just goes around exploiting people to get them to do the things that he needs done. But he doesn't actually want to do anything. And so he's like, well, why would I do something myself if I can get somebody who's younger and more innocent, who doesn't understand what I'm making them do before me? Like, why would I do this myself if I could get somebody else to do it instead? That's basically his whole like life goal. That's like just how he operates. And so like from the very beginning, when he first meets Percy and stuff, him grooming Percy to like him, when he's at camp, he's like getting Percy to like help him with stuff, and he's giving Percy like some cursed shoes that are supposed to send him to hell and things like that, because he can't go on the quest because he kind of messed that up by making Percy want to bring Annabeth instead. And so that's his way of like figuring out a way to do it. But even that is like using, I mean, if you want to be serious, every single thing about Luke and Annabeth is him exploiting her labor.
So that's why you poisoned Thalia's tree, to force a quest for the fleece. That's why you destroyed all that's left of your oldest friend.
You didn't know her.
Did Kronos tell you about the great prophecy?
He speaks directly to me now.
And you trust him not to twist the words of a prophecy in his favor?
Is Grover the other boyfriend?
No!
There's another boyfriend?
The tall one in her dreams.
Stop giving! I want to believe that If I can just think 6 steps ahead, I can save you. But it's never gonna be the big impossible choice I have to outthink. It's all the million little choices I can't see. Because even before Luke left, you were the only one I could really talk to. I'm going to fix this. I just need to know how.
And like, I'm sure there are people that will say that like Chiron exploits her labor, which you could argue that in some circumstances that he does, because she like looks so many things up and just knows so many things that he can go to her about things like that, and just knows he can talk to her about that kind of stuff. She's been around at camp for so long.
No, there's something he can't know.
Like, yes, you could say that, and I'm not trying to say that to take it away from Chiron, but the amount of times that Luke does that with Annabeth is genuinely disgusting. Like, when I think about it, like, I think that it's so weird that some of the first things you ever hear Luke ever say ever in the first book is that, like, oh, Annabeth is 6 steps ahead of everybody else, and you should try to get her to like you, Percy, even though she's stalking you at camp, because she's so much smarter than everybody, and she's gonna like do all these amazing things one day, and I'm always on her side, and she's like my sister. Like, she's 12.
Yeah.
She's 12? She's 12. Have you... Look up a 12-year-old. If you're not, like, around that age, look up what a 12-year-old looks like. Do you think that's a fair way to describe a 12-year-old? That they're 6 steps ahead of everybody else? And that they can, like, handle whatever comes their way?
It's not a good thing. It's definitely a traumatized child if you're saying that, because like a lot of us did get the "you're mature for your age" bullshit.
I did too.
It's not a good thing if someone's saying that about you and you're 12.
No, and it's more the thing that, like, Chiron seems to be aware that he is asking sometimes Annabeth and Percy and Grover even to do things that they don't want to do, and that he knows he shouldn't really be asking them to do this stuff, but he doesn't really have a choice. But Luke is like, I love doing this. I don't see that there's a problem with me manipulating Annabeth and using all of the knowledge and information she has to my devices. Because isn't this what friendship is? Just using each other back and forth. And because even in the show, like, they changed that a little bit when they got to the finale, but before the finale on the show, every time Thalia would be fighting somebody, he would just be like not helping. And I remember being like, hello, like, Luke, why are you making her go fight by herself? Why are you using like Annabeth as like a way to get out of this stuff? Like, you should be helping her so she doesn't have to do this all alone. But it's like that sort of stuff that he tends to do. Like, I'm curious to see if they go into any of that stuff in season 3, but my hopes for that are in literal hell. Yeah. So I'm not expecting them to do that, but if they did, I would be like shocked. I might actually like fall over and die if they did, because I really don't expect them to at all. But if they did, it would be very nice, because that is part of the whole dynamic in the book version of events, which is why I didn't like how they changed stuff with Thalia in the show, was that Thalia dies because of Luke. And like, yes, you don't realize that until the last book when she tells Percy that and everything, but it's still like something that is true, that she says, like, he kept fighting all these things, and so all these monsters were the Furies showed up at camp like they did because he was attracting so much attention, because he kept fighting everything we ran into, because he was just angry at his dad and wouldn't stop. And so she ended up dying because it was like a self-fulfilling prophecy, that he was like doing all these things to create all this chaos and anger that ended up costing like her life for a while. And so of course I don't like that none of that was on the show, but there are so many other things, at least in the books that we know of, where Luke does things like this. Like, he just he's constantly exploiting other people. Like we mentioned already, that the way that he was having Ethan try to join his army was for him to kill Percy for him. Because Luke is a little loser, and he knows that he can't beat Percy because he's tried already multiple times and it hasn't worked somehow. Even though
he doesn't want to take the risk in front of Antaeus, probably.
Yeah, like he doesn't want to look like a little bitch in front of all of the people in his army. And so he is instead having Ethan do it for him. It's like, oh, I don't have to fight you and kill you yourself. I can just watch somebody else do it while I sit here in the stands and do nothing. Or of course, like the biggest one is how he gets people that are at camp to spy on their friends. Like, of course, Selena, but she's not the only one. But still, like, that's the main one. The whole reason why Selena is stuck in that, like, hell with him for all those years is because Percy lives and, like, outs him to the rest of camp, and so he can't be there anymore. And so he's like, well, I can't be at camp anymore, but I want to know what's going on there because I want to be able to know, like, what's happening, and so I can plan when I'm going to murder all of them successfully. And so I'm just going to find someone at camp that is, like, susceptible, basically, to my manipulations, that will, like, keep tabs on these people for me and doesn't think about what he's putting her through ever. Never. He doesn't care at all, because if he did, he wouldn't do the things that you wouldn't be able to do those sort of things to another person, knowing that you're putting them in this horrific position, that they're around people every day, that you're telling them you have to spy on them and give me this information, because if you don't, they're going to die. And then promising that you'll like keep the people that they love safe, only to kill them anyway. You wouldn't be able to do any of that kind of stuff for years if you actually cared about what you're putting them through. You don't. It's just easier for him. It's literally like she's like a clipboard. Like, she's like a clipboard of information that walks and talks for him. She just needs to know information. She is the way that he can get it. And so he says whatever he can to her so he can get it. The other version, of course, is Chris Rodriguez. That Chris Rodriguez is like somebody that was also a Hermes kid, even though he didn't realize it for a little while. But they at least, like, were really good friends. They were both in the Hermes cabin together. He convinces him to join him and then shoves him into the labyrinth, and has him go through the labyrinth alone, because if he goes through it alone, they'll figure it out faster. And so instead of him going through with another person, where there's a higher probability that they'll figure it out, like, safer, because they're not by themselves, he's like, well, it'll be faster if you go by yourself. And so why don't I just, like, shove you in here completely alone in a labyrinth that's really dark and underground, that's meant to be really confusing, that makes people go crazy.
Yeah.
You're supposed to be my best friend, but I'm going to do that because if you figure out how to get through this labyrinth faster for me, then I get to kill everybody sooner. And so he doesn't care, like, how it would affect Chris and what he would go through or anything like that, to the point that he just abandons him in there and leaves him to just lose his mind, because he's no longer useful to him after he's lost his mind.
Yeah.
Doing what he asked him to do. It's just everybody, but, like, really, he just uses any person near him to get them to do something that he could do. And of course, like, Kronos himself is using all these kids, including Luke, for all of his devices. He knew that, of course, that Luke was never going to live. That he was using all of them so that he could kill them all at the very end and have his little bitch fight with the rest of the gods. Whatever stupidity that would have been. That's all he cared about. He just wanted to, like, have his fight with Zeus. Like, the ultimate, like, father-son
showdown.
Conflict. Like, this is how I picture when I meet my dad in, like, the afterlife one day. Like, rue the day I will tear your head off your body every single day for the next 120 years. and you're gonna take it because what other choice do you have? But that's like me doing it like, I deserve to do that to him. Kronos does not. But that's all Kronos was trying to do. He's just using all these different things, whatever it is. They're just constantly looking for things that they can use to make things easier for themselves so they don't have to actually do anything. And it's just that overall thing that you shouldn't have to do that. That's like the whole thing with all this stuff is that you don't like. There are things that happen at camp that people don't like with Chiron, but people are allowed to like question him.
Yeah.
And you do question him, and you do question the gods, and you question other things that are happening. Like Percy gets mad at some of the other demigods when they seem to be using him. Like the best kind of more low-key example compared to like Luke, of course, is like Nico in the last book, in The Last Olympian, where he shows up and is like, remember how my sister's dead? Like literally says like, Bianca would want you to come with me. And when he doesn't want to go, and trying to get him to go to the underworld with him so his dad can do stuff with like try to, hold him captive or do something terrible. He doesn't know what it is exactly, but there's no way that he thought that Hades wanted to just like sit down with Percy and have a really nice discussion. Like he definitely was going to do something to him. And he was like bringing up like, Bianca would have wanted you to come with me. And don't you want to come help me? Because I'm sad without my sister. He literally says that as a way to get him to go. And then of course, when they get down there and Percy realizes that he's been, manipulating him, lying to him this whole time, and he gets upset. And he gets upset with him, and he has a right to be upset with him for that, because he did lie to him during all that stuff and was like trying to use him so that he could get something from his dad that he wanted. And he's like, your dad's not going to tell you this stuff anyway. Which of course, like he didn't. Like there's nothing his dad could say that would like be enough for Nico to hear about his mom and stuff. But that's like a more low-key example, but still, like Percy was stuck in a room where he was about to suffocate to death because Nico tried to use him so that he could find out about his own mom. That's kind of that general idea of doing things like that. But Percy is upset with Nico and is telling him like, I know you can figure this out with your dad, but you need to like stay down here and figure this out with your dad first. Because that really sucked. And I don't want you like coming back with me just yet. After you kind of like, lied to me for a while. But he like tells him that he's upset with him when that kind of stuff happens. He's allowed to do that. Like Luke can't ever even act like he's upset by something that Kronos did. Like ironically, the TV show like had him do that in that scene to like justify doing like the ridiculous over the top like physical torture stuff they do at the end of the 7th episode. Yeah. But they had him challenge him like that just so he would do that. So like the audience could see that, because that is the kind of thing that you can't really do too much with people like that, because that's what they do to you when you question them too much. Okay. And then and this goes into like the next one, which is high exit costs, which is the thing that Daniela brought up that I liked, was that there's a high entrance cost, which leads to a high exit cost.
You're giving up a lot to get in, and then you're giving up a lot to get out. And one of the biggest exit costs is having to go back to friends and family and say you were wrong.
They knew when they started off on this thing that what could possibly happen if people found out. And that like kind of like threat hanging over their head. And anyone who joins him is the reason why they stay, I'm sure, a lot of the time, because they want to think that what they're doing is like worth something, But I really like the way that she put this, which is that it's just, you don't want to have to admit that you were wrong. That's literally all it is. Most of the time when people stay in any sort of cult or high control group or whatever you want to call it, it's because they don't want to have to admit that they made the wrong decision. That's why I get so frustrated with the people that don't want women that are in domestic violence situations to like make videos about their husbands, or you want people to be able to feel like they can say like, I made a mistake, I did something wrong. And like, you always feel a lot of shame when you have those things going on, but you want somebody around those people to be able to be someone they can go to admit that sort of stuff and know that if they say that they will listen to them. And like, you can argue maybe that when Luke shows up at Annabeth's house, that's like him trying to do that. That's one of those things that people argue about a lot. I have a hard time believing that though, because Kronos was already inside of him by that point.
Yeah.
And been hanging out in there for a while, for like 2 books by that point. And so it wasn't exactly the thing that people like wanted it to be, but it does present you with what you think. If you want to think that Luke was like fighting against Kronos this whole time and was like, and actually thought that he was doing the right thing, that is like a moment you can go back to like think that he actually thought that. Or like when he's like begging Thalia, like, please Thalia, you have to save me, at like the end of Titan's Curse. Like you could think that if you want to think that there's something that he actually thinks that what he's doing is good and that he actually wants these people to join him, those are moments where you could, but really it's honestly that you just don't want to admit that you're wrong. And when people are like, you have to like tell people when they're doing things that hurt people, that they're doing things that hurt people. That's true. But there are ways to do it in a way that doesn't make the shame that they feel even worse. And honestly, ironically, most of the stuff that people do with Luke is like pretty okay. Because Rick Riordan's like an adult and a teacher that was writing this for children. And so he made it in a place where the people that were, even Percy, like he doesn't like say the things that you would maybe imagine him to say to Luke. And so Luke could have, and that's like the thing that's like frustrating about talking to people about him is that like, yes, he would feel shame. Yes, he would be like embarrassed. He wouldn't want to admit that he did all of these things. He killed people. He told people to kill people. He hurt all these kids and did all these things to like, because he thought that, because he got so wrapped up in this idea that he couldn't get out until it was this far along. But when the other option of that is murdering children
that you personally know and are partially related to and care about.
Yeah, maybe you should do that anyway. And that's like the thing that why my empathy for him like has like a stopping point, as it does with most people with things like that. Like I have empathy for like people who are bishops in the Mormon church. They are honestly exploited a lot. Because they have no idea what they're doing, and they're doing all of that stuff they have to do for free. But when I hear stories about how they traumatize kids by asking them all of these questions about their sex life in this very uncomfortable sort of way, and like say comments to young girls, shaming them for their bodies and like what they're wearing, to the point that sometimes they go to church and they tell them that their dress is too short and make them go and change before they're allowed to like leave, and things like really, really shameful, horrible things for like an 8-year-old girl to hear. And so that's where that's like empathy stops. Like, yeah. I understand that you're part of like a cult and that it's told you that this is the way to like save people's souls. But when I hear stories about you harming kids like that, I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
You've gone too far. And like, that's part of the whole process of leaving, is that you have to like understand, like actually feel like the gravity of all of the people that you've hurt. And there's nothing to like make that any better really, but besides the fact that you know that at least you're not going to do it anymore, that whatever pain that you caused, it stopped. But it's, my dad's dead.
Yeah.
He can't hurt anybody anymore because he's physically not able to do it. If he was, still alive, he would still be doing it. But
Yeah.
he can't because he's no longer alive. And that's like the thing that's sad about people like Luke and like my dad and other people like that, is that some people never will just like not, their ability to not admit that they were wrong will make them do the most monstrous things you can possibly ever imagine until they're no longer alive anymore, because they just like can't do it. Like he literally could not even admit that he was doing something wrong until he lost control of his entire body and found out that that was also going to disappear.
Yeah.
That is the only time that he actually was like, oh, maybe I'm doing something wrong and I should stop and I should listen. And even at the very end when he's saying like, I should have listened to all of you, and Percy's thinking like, yeah, you should have listened when I was 12. And it's like the example I always give about like high entrance and high exit costs. I feel like Luke's high entrance cost was trying to kill Percy. Because before that, it was more like kind of like a hypothetical thing he was doing. Like, yeah, he stole these things from the gods, but I feel like it almost felt like a fun D&D game or something.
Yes.
Like he was playing or something. But then when a 12-year-old little baby child like Percy shows up at camp that you've been told is going to show up there, and then you find out that he's a son of Poseidon, and you're like, oh god, this is really serious. When you know what's happening between the gods more than anybody else does. And you like know that you're giving this thing to this child that is going to kill them. And especially when you actually trying to kill them when they come back, it's like that was him like fully joining. And he could have decided not to. He could have decided like, I can't do this. Like I can't kill this kid and like frame him for what I'm doing. Probably I can't do it. That's always the option, to say like, you can't do it. Sometimes people can't kill children. There are people in cults that can't do it and they leave.
In terms of high exit costs, like we do see two people that leave Kronos' cult, and the two people are Ethan, and his exit cost is literally death. And then the same with why did I just forget her name?
Selena.
Selena, there we go. Yes, Selena. Also, her exit cost is death. You know, that to break away from it, to right the wrongs, they unfortunately end up sacrificing their own lives.
Yeah. Like Selena just like doesn't exist anymore. And Ethan, like I said, like Ethan talked to Percy 4 times and then willingly like gave up his sword knowing that he was probably going to die, but was like, I'd rather die than continue doing this stuff that we're doing, because I realize now that I shouldn't have been doing it at all.
Yeah.
And in the same way, like Selena realizes like, wow, this person was actually completely lying to me every second of every day. I can't handle this. And so she just like sacrificed herself. But like, I will say that when it comes to like, if camp is a cult, when you think about the high exit or entrance costs, like, you know, Percy got to camp and he thought that his mom died in front of him. Even if Sally ended up being alive, that's still very traumatic for a 12-year-old little baby to see his mom seemingly die in front of him and think that it was his fault.
Yes.
Like he thought that a lot of things was his fault. And so that would be really hard no matter what. I really liked that scene actually in the finale of season 2 where Percy gets like really emotional about that, about her being close to camp again, because he just like can't even like take the chance that could even be possible, because it was, even if she came back, it was still really scary for him. But when it comes to like high exit costs, like we said, people leave camp all the time and are able to like leave and come back and leave and come back like it's no big deal. But it's more also to me the idea that like when Ethan dies, when like Chris Rodriguez like literally like loses his mind in order to leave, quote unquote leave, like Luke's side. He's just like left for dead in the middle of the labyrinth. Unless the kids found him in there, he would have just died in there. But also with Luke and Ethan and even Chris Rodriguez, like Luke's army and Kronos for that matter, they basically are just like keep going. Like, it's, you know, that feeling at like every corporate job that like, does what I do really matter? Because they can just replace me like nothing, because I'm just like a number, and they can just find somebody else to do the job that I do, because it's not actually that important. I don't really make that much of a difference, sort of feeling is kind of how that feels. But when Selena sacrifices herself and everything, that like messes everybody up, for like lack of a better word. Like, it's a huge moment. It affects like every character in the books that you've ever met before. It's a really emotional part of the story, because you're so upset that this happened to her, and you're really upset. And it's like, what happened is what she told people Luke was doing to her that makes Annabeth realize that there's no saving Luke. And she finally like gives up any hope of ever saving him when she hears about what Selena went through with him. And so, like, yes, she did die. She did die because she felt like she had to do that to like make up for what she was doing in those other years. But it's seen as this like ginormous tragedy, to the point that multiple characters in The Lost Hero are making decisions because of her. Like, Hyper doesn't want to be like another version of her. She doesn't want to be another Aphrodite child that like betrays everybody. Drew is just like a walking trauma response of what happened with Selena, like being mean, sure, but keeping everybody very far away and like trying to control everybody after what happened to Selena happened. And trying to like make everybody just do what she thinks they should do now, so that never happens again. And it's just, there's still like, people still talk about her because the characters and things that were affected by her are still, you can still see it in the books that they're in. And so even though Charlie and Selena die, and even like Bianca dies and Zoe dies, like they have like an actual like long-term effect on the characters that knew them. Like, Percy is thinking about Zoe at the end of House of Hades, which is one of the later books in the Heroes of Olympus series. And so they're just like, you actually feel like the gravity of them being gone. And with these other characters, it's just like, oh, they're gone, bye. Like the like kids at camp care about Ethan Nakamura and stuff, but the people that he actually spent time with in that army of his don't care about him at all. And so then, of course, the very last thing is that ends justify the means.
And people know they are doing something wrong, right? Jim Jones's closest staff knew that they were helping him fake his faith healings, right?
And that is like the number one thing that we talk about with Luke, especially, all the time. I don't care if people are tired of us talking about it, because I read something almost every day of somebody trying to like lessen this sort of idea. But the idea is that you know that you are lying, you know that you are covering things up, but you think like, I'm okay with doing this because the end justify the means. Like it's ironic when I look at the story with Percy, with like Luke being a little edgelord and calling camp like a cult and things like that, because of course he ends up believing that more than anybody else, that all these things that he's doing justifies the end, because he gets to like win against his dad. Honestly, that's like the main thing he's trying to do. But it's ironic to me, because the gods are the ones that say that more, that like the ends justify the means. But like people at camp don't actually think that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that they do. I don't really think Chiron thinks the ends justify the means. He's usually not very happy with what the gods are asking these kids to do, to the point that in like the second book, he straight up tells Percy, like, if you don't want to be the prophecy kid, you don't have to, and I'll protect you from the gods if they're upset with you because you don't want to do it because you're a kid and you don't have to do it if you don't want to. And like people are constantly asking Percy, like, are you sure you want to do this? And he's like, yeah, sure, whatever. But they're still like asking him all the time if he wants to, because he does actually have the option to say no. And so it's just, they don't want them to do this. Like, he doesn't want these kids to die. He doesn't think that doing that stuff is like okay. I think that for somebody who's a little edgelord like Luke and thinks that anything that Hermes said has to be wrong, and so everything that the gods say has to be wrong and bad and evil, I think that he would think that camp has to be thinking that it's okay, or that what the gods put them through is all right because it ends with them going on a quest and being heroes for like 3 days at a time or whatever. But I don't know. The more you get to know those characters as the books go on, it's hard to believe that they actually think that. Even Dionysus is really sad when his kid dies. And I don't think he would sit there and be like, well, my son deserved to die because the ends just because the ends justify the means, and he died being a hero in this battle. No. He's really sad that his son died, and he, to the point that he's like overprotective of the other one in the last book because he doesn't want to lose both of them. And so people at camp they don't really think that. I can see how it would be easy for people to think that they might, because the gods might say that. But that's kind of the whole story, honestly, is to say that like how the gods see their kids is not actually right. Exactly. Like, that's the whole thing of the whole story of proving to them that if you're this like brutal and like violent with your children, that's going to eventually lead to like brutality coming towards you. And so you should stop making your kids want to kill you so much that they're willing to join somebody like Luke, by just treating them like a little bit like a human, and then they won't want to do this stuff to you anymore because they actually have a lot of support here. You're the only problem.
Even if we're just talking in the Percy Jackson universe, the whole idea that the gods are a little bit more lofty and, you know, they don't come down to earth that much and interact with humans except to make babies, apparently. And so they need the demigods to do all of these things for them. Their whole mentality with that is a very much ends justify the means of how they treat their kids. But I would say that Luke's side does that even more so with the demigods, because that again goes to the brainwashing of, well, the best thing for everybody is if the Olympians aren't in power, and for the Olympians to not be in power, we need to take away, what do they call them, their tools or their weapons? Like, I think they call them both at some point. And that is unfortunately the other demigods. Whatever, I guess we have to.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point, is that with Luke's side, they just think like the other demigods, we don't necessarily want to kill them, but if they don't join us, like he says even in the TV show, like if you don't join me, then I'm going to have to wipe you out.
Yeah, the smart ones will join me.
But if you just join me, then I won't have to kill you. And so really this is your fault if you die, because you could have just joined me and then I don't have to murder you later. But any society that is built on the backs of murdered children is rotten and destroyed from the beginning and doesn't deserve to exist. And so if children have to die in order for you to get utopia that you think you deserve, you don't deserve it. And whatever utopia you think it is doesn't exist. If innocent people have to die in order for you to get it, you don't deserve to get it. And that's really like, I'm very sure that Rick Riordan agrees with that, because that's the overall thing of these books is having characters that don't think that. I definitely recommend looking up Daniela Mastinik Young and all of her stuff. She's like everywhere on social media, but she has a couple books that she, I think, does the audiobook for too. She has a podcast on YouTube. She just talks about cults in a way that makes it easy to understand if you're not sure. And also just like talks about all the things that cult survivors go through, which is really nice. I honestly relate to a lot of the things she talks about.
Yeah, and I mean, like, so what the Camp Half-Blood stuff boils down to when it comes to the culty aspects, it's hard to call it purely a cult because, again, I feel like I need to keep pointing this out. We're in a universe where we know that this religion is the truth. And so, like, obeying the laws of this religion is a survival technique. You know, it's not a choice. It's not something that they consent to. It's something they literally have to do if they want to survive these quests. If they want to survive the Titan War, if they want to survive just general life in New York City or wherever in the United States they would end up living. And let's see, the other part is that dysfunctional families, the control aspect, it's always there with us. Like, it's why a lot of us find special interests in these high control groups that aren't just families, that are like larger systems. To put it that way, you know, like larger than us and our extended family and anybody else who may act the way that our families act.
And I will say too that Luke is not the only one, definitely, that grew up in like a culty, dysfunctional family sort of situation that then like moved into another like more severe high control group, cult group, like that later on. That
common.
Yeah, that happens a lot. And so if you're somebody that went through that, that's part of why when I started getting help, I like wouldn't let myself stop for as long as humanly possible, even until right now. Like I always am like trying to learn new things or looking into new things like groups like this, because there is a part of your brain that just like likes the idea of things being so simple, because having to like make all of your own decisions and not having the like guarantee like you do in these groups that you're right is really hard. To actually have to like actually figure out what you're going to do in your life without somebody else just telling you what to do first. That's absolutely terrifying. Like I hate that. I still hate that. But I honestly don't know if I'm doing the right thing or if I should be doing something else, but I just haven't thought of it yet. And there is always a part of me that wishes I could just go back to like somebody always telling me what to do instead, because then I don't have to think. But so those groups are always kind of enticing for those reasons. When you're overloaded with trauma and stuff, you don't want to have to figure that stuff out. So you would rather just like give all that stuff over to somebody else. But just like try to be aware of these sort of things, because those groups always just delay all the stuff that you're having to like figure out.
So I mean, this is going to be our stance going into the third season still, is just like, yeah, Camp Half-Blood isn't perfect. Like, I don't think that anybody that is not a Luke apologist would be like, oh, Camp Half-Blood is the worst place, or is the best place ever, and it's perfect, and the gods are perfect. No, nobody thinks that. Nobody thinks that. It's kind of similar to when I was talking about Medea, how even the people that hate Medea, there's nobody that's like, well, Jason was fine. You know, like Jason was a stand-up guy at the end of that. Most people agree he was a piece of shit too. So most of us agree the gods are terrible. They're terrible parents. They're terrible authority figures, terrible leaders. And, you know, like Camp Half-Blood isn't a great place. You know, at the end of the day, the best it gives them is the community. At the worst, it's a place where they have to be faced with their trauma. And like, you know, they can't go back into the delusion of life is not this thing.
It kind of is both. And that's why I like it. I like how Rick wrote it. I like how he talks about it, and how camp isn't like this perfect utopia place where like nothing bad ever happens, like Harry Potter, is that look on my face, is how like that magical world is presented as like everything is amazing and everything is wonderful and isn't everything beautiful, and Hogwarts is like the best place ever, and it's like Voldemort that is the only thing that is causing any problems in that world. They don't really talk about like the flaws that are in all of the that is in like Hogwarts and in the world in general, which is what drives everybody insane. As they were reading those books when they got like old enough to like really conceptualize what the heck was in them, but like with this, but with this camp, it isn't like that, which makes it feel more real to me. That like sometimes Chiron doesn't say or do the right thing because he's a person that isn't going to say or do the right thing every single time. Nobody is going to say or do the right thing every single time. Like even if you go to see like a therapist or something, your therapist will sometimes say something that hurts your feelings. You're supposed to tell them about it, because if you tell them about it, then you can talk about it, instead of like, because you can actually tell your therapist things like that. You're supposed to be able to tell like teachers when you're mad at them, when they hurt your feelings or whatever, because they actually are supposed to care about you. Like Chiron will sometimes hurt the kid's feelings, but he actually cares about the fact that he did, and wants to like somehow make things better later on so that he doesn't do that anymore. Or he apologizes to them for the times that he does, or just acknowledges how hard all this stuff is. And that's why I like it, is that it gives these kids a place to deal with all the trauma that they went through when it finally like stops. When they're there and is surrounded by other people that can help them deal with it instead of being completely alone like they are most of the other times in their life. But it's not perfect either.
So we are going to come back with the Lost Hero chapters on another episode. Because those are also intense, and it's kind of interesting what Rick built with the universe. Like, this will just be our teaser for our next Lost Hero episode, but like, I kind of think it's interesting that Rick decided to bring in these other figures from Greek mythology he wouldn't have been able to otherwise, because they're mortals who are now dead, by having them kind of like join the side of Gaia a little bit. Which like we saw happen with Medea, and we talked about, like, we left on the cliffhanger of they're in Midas's house in the last one. And so like I do think it's a creative way for him to be like, okay, I can bring these people back even though they shouldn't have been able to come back otherwise.
Yeah, and it just makes it more scary, I guess, is the best way to put it. Like, all the villains in the first 5 books were like monsters and like Luke. And and so you kind of knew who it was going to be. But in these books, like, anyone could show up. The same person could show up multiple times, because they're coming back so quickly that they're hardly even gone. And so when they kill something, it's not exactly guaranteed that they're going to stay like that.
Yeah.
And the gods aren't around to like help them at all. And so they're literally just like flapping out there in the wind. And so it's really fun to imagine. Like, I didn't even want to look up who King Midas was when I first read it until they said it in the book, because it's like fun for me to just read it and see who it is, because I honestly forgot that he was like a Greek mythology story.
Yeah.
I forget about a lot of that stuff after a while. I don't want to look into it because I want Rick to just tell me about it when they pop up in one of his books instead of like researching it. But he
does a great job of that, of like telling you all the details you need to know. And Midas, I will point out once again, is mostly a myth that we know the tradition of because of Ovid.
Yes, our favorite.
Yeah.
And once again, as like a cliffhanger for that, Midas is once again a dad that is a horrible father.
Oh my gosh. Yep, the theme of horrible fathers continues.
It's my favorite. You wonder why I like these books so much and why I liked them so much back in the day. Every single dad is a horrible person. Every single one.
Yeah. All right, so we'll be back with another episode this week for the Lost Hero chapters, and we've been begging to do D&D episodes, so I'll have a definite date by next episode.
Okay, that works.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.